Alright guys, welcome back. This is Eric here with Guitarsenal. Today we're going to be doing sort of a, I guess you could call it a lesson. Not really guitar, but really kind of music theory in a way. And okay, so I'm playing Stand By Me there in the intro, a little bit, just sort of jamming, vamping on those chords. And it's a great platform for us to discuss relative minors. So my dad got me into, I guess, soul music when I was young, and when I learned how to play guitar, those are a lot of the songs I learned how to play. It was, you know, a lot of the stuff where you're going, you know, like A to F minor, like that, and then like D to E, you know, you got a 1, 4, 5 and like a 6 chord or whatever that would be, your relative minor chord to that one chord, okay? If you're in A, the relative minor is F sharp or minor, okay? So this gets into where you study like the circle of fifths. Now the circle of fifths is a much more complicated thing than really what we're going to talk about in the scope of this video, but it is related to the circle of fifths because relative minors, when you look at the circle of fifths on that wheel, you'll see the relative minors across the chart, okay, across the wheel, okay, so to speak. We're going to focus on relative minors, and the reason that guitar playing, I believe, to really master the instrument, understanding those relatives can really get you into some positional things that'll really help you out a lot. Okay, so there's a lot of tunes that go like that, where you've got that minor chord. And I know you've heard, like, if you're in G, for instance, your relative minor is going to be E minor. Whatever, that sort of thing. So what it comes down to is, from a positional standpoint of playing guitar, you have your minor scales and your major scales. And there's certain times where with the relative minor, as long as you understand what that relative minor chord is in relation to the major chord that you're playing over, you can get away with playing what essentially is minor chords. Okay, and what I mean by that is if, for instance, someone's going, I don't know, a real pokey little progression like a, I don't know, like a, so 1, 4, 5 or something that's real hokey pokey. No 9 chords, no 7s, no inversions, just something real hokey pokey. Well, if someone's doing that, those type of chords, I can go up here to F sharp minor and I can still get away with them. I'm really focusing on the A that is within that scale, but I'm using the kind of minor shapes. So you can get into some of the pentatonics even and cheat a little bit even when you're in a major key. That's the whole kind of point. So you hear Hendrix do it all the time, right? I mean, I'm talking all the time. And one of the most popular, you know, minor to major correlations that you hear is if anybody's playing in E, C sharp minor is going to be the relative minor to E. So you always hear Hendrix all the time, right? What does he do? If you hear a chord like a, you might hear a, I'm concentrating on those major tonalities, but I'm doing it still basically in a C sharp minor blues. Okay, so if the only scale I know, right, is I don't have to learn any more scales. All right, if a major key comes along, the major scale is still in there. Okay, so if we're in E, if we're in E and a guy's playing A and B and a couple of major chords, well, my E's right here. Right? So see, I don't have to necessarily go. I don't have to play a major scale. I can go. Because it's relative minor. So I'm still using those minor tonalities, but because of circle of fifths and because of those resolutions to each other, it just depends on what notes in that scale you're going to sort of pander to. Okay, and I hope that makes sense, because if I'm playing in C minor, C sharp minor, so if I was resolving to an E, I'm already on E. If I want to resolve to a C sharp minor, which would be the relative minor to E major, so see, really it's kind of all the same. It allows you to sort of cheat a little bit. You can know a couple of scales and you can get away with a heck of a lot in terms of what you're doing on the guitar. And those relative minors are important because you transpose those shapes and those scales all over the neck depending on what you hear. And you got to kind of let your ear do the work. If you hear a major chord, you know the relative minor, well, don't worry about if, oh, I have to play the major scale in this right spot. I mean, you still need to know how to play major scales and pentatonic, major pentatonic and minor pentatonic, minor scales, harmonic minor. Still know those things, but understand that as long as you know your relative minors, if you hear a major chord, you can instantly kind of jump in there a little bit. And I learned that when my dad taught me a lot of those early, soul and bebop kind of songs like that, where, the early 60s songs that use a lot of those just very deliberate chord changes. And after a while, you kind of start poking along with them a little bit, and you go, well, wait a minute, I can play an F sharp minor, and if a guy's in A major, I can kind of make that work, right? And that's great if you're a blues player, if you're a bluesy sort of guy, because if you hear an A major chord, like, for instance, let me clear my loop. Let's say a guy's playing something like, let's see. Okay, so there's two major chords. There's an A major and a D major, which would be a 1 and a 4. Okay, so vamping between a 1 and a 4 chord in a major key. Keep that in mind. All right, now I'm going to noodle over it. I'm going to use F sharp minor as my relative minor, and then I'm going to go around some different spots on the neck. I'm going to play minor scales, but they're going to be majorly tonally correct because of where I'm focusing on those scales within the context of what I want to hear. Okay, so listen to this. So you notice I'm still putting in some of those blue notes, and I'm still even kind of landing on an F sharp minor or F sharp in that scale somewhere, but it still tonally makes sense. It forces your ear to kind of hear it the way you want to hear it. So it becomes bluesy, even though I guess a music theory person or a guitar teacher would tell you that if a guy was playing those two chords, to do this instead. You can do that. I mean, it is A major, so A major is A major. But you notice that when I'm playing scales in A major, that's 3 movements. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 pick movements to make per string to play an A major scale. And that's all good and fine, but I can also kind of tweak a little bit with those pence, with those minor pence, and kind of get in the same zone, and it kind of changes your phrasing a little bit too. So don't be afraid to think out of the box of, all right, well, I have to play A major. Well, yeah, I mean, notes are notes, and you've got to get there somehow, but I think it's a phrasing thing as well. So it would be really hard for me over this chord progression to do this. Now if I want to play something bluesy like that, but I only want to use the exacting tolerances of an A major scale, let's try that. That might be a little kind of hard sounding. Let's see if I can make an A major, just strictly A major scale, sound kind of bluesy. So you get what hopefully you guys understand what I'm getting at there. If you understand those relative minors, you can cheat a little bit. You don't have to know how to expertly play every major scale all over the neck or every type of scale. You can get away with minor pentatonic, pentatonic, major pentatonic, and then just letting your ear be the guide to the tonality of the song. And it also comes around to knowing your way around the neck. So if a person plays a C, quick, what's the relative minor of C? A minor. You should know it without even thinking about it. So see, once you learn the theory and understand where you're at, okay, so if you're in D major, what's the relative minor to D major? B minor. You should know that without even thinking about it. Once you learn those things, then I know that if I hear a guy playing a D chord, and I hear that, it's also shapes. If I'm seeing a D chord being played, okay, pretend that D chord is still there. Now look at a B minor chord. You're holding down a lot of the same notes. So from a standpoint of shapes, even if you don't consider theory, you have to at least determine that a D and a B minor are somewhat related, okay? So you know that relation because of music theory and because relative minors are relative minors, but if someone's playing a D, then I know I can come up here and hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I mean, this is a very broad subject, and you know, there's probably a lot of music theory people that could tell you a lot more advanced stuff than what I'm trying to tell you, or the way that I'm trying to tell you. But I'm just kind of teaching you the way that I learned it and figured it out, and the way that I was taught about relative minors is really, getting into some of those songs from the 60s. Listen to Stand By Me, Benny King. Listen to, what is that Pearl Jam song? Last Kiss. What is the name of that Pearl Jam song where it's like an old school kind of 60s vibe. It's like a, you know, it kind of goes like a, but you see, those kind of chord progressions are great to learn relative minors because you've got the C, you've got the A minor, you got the F, you've got the G. So you got your 1, 4, 5, and I guess that would be a 6 chord would be a relative minor. Yeah. Yeah, 6. So your 6 chord is a minor chord. See how I figured that out? But it's just knowing the theory. You have to kind of, you know, figure it out. So those types of progressions are wonderful to practice your blues scales within the context of major chords and being able to get away with those minor pents and then kind of learning how that all kind of comes together. So I guess that's really what I wanted this video to be about, was teaching you guys that. Understand your relative minors and where they come into play and learn how you can kind of cheat a little bit. But it's also a positional awareness thing on the guitar that I feel is extremely important to know. Because think about another aspect of the situational awareness. Okay, so we're in C, right? Just then. So if I'm playing a C major chord right up here on the neck, knowing my relative minor is important because not only is my A minor right here, which is the relative minor of C, but when I'm holding this down, think about it in terms of relative. What is also relative to this chord shape? C, right? I'm holding down a C. The only difference is the root note. So if I position my hand right here, see, it's the same thing I'm holding down. So the way that people like Jimi Hendrix would sort of get it in his mind would be right? He's thinking of it in terms of the relative minors, in terms of shapes. You bastardize the shapes of the chords and they become part of the licks that you come up with. And that's how I envision a lot of my guitar playing, is shapes and positions on the board and chord shapes. So maybe this will help some of you guys that are stuck in a bit of a rut. You know, some people ask questions about, you know, how do you improvise? How do you just speak a musical language? How do you come up with ideas off the fly and just make it work? That's how. Understanding relative minors, in my opinion, is an extremely important part. Study the circle of fifths. Study some of those progressions, like a 1 4 5 6 style progression. I guess it would be a 1 6 4 5. Okay. Study a 1 6 4 5. Study your 2 to 5 progressions. Your vamps going between a 2 and a 5 chord. Okay. And those kind of things can really open up your eyes as to what a relative minor understanding can do for you in terms of developing your playing and helping you learn the neck. That's also a very important aspect of it. Relative minors help you understand where you're at on the neck and where things are at. So, guys, thank you very much for watching today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something. I know it's sort of a somewhat crude explanation, but it's the way that I was taught over the years, and it's the way I sort of just wrap my mind around it. That's the way my mind understands it. Whether or not it's right or wrong, it may work for you, it may not, but try to look at it from that perspective and you'll quickly start understanding, well, hey, this relative minor thing, I can really cheat some of these things and get some cool sounding sort of things. It'll change your phrasing, it'll change the way you think about what you're playing, it'll help you understand the shapes of the chords and how they correlate to the scales and the patterns, and that, in my opinion, it will get you to a deeper understanding of the guitar, allow you to understand the guitar a little better. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday here on Guitarsenal. Make sure you tune in. Appreciate all of you. We will see you next time. Many more videos on the way.